It's good. Georgia versus Texas rematch, SEC championship game. Also, National Signing Day 2025 class. Got a great return guest, Chris Hayes from Dawg's Dispatch and Chris Hayes Film Room. How are we doing today, Coach Hayes?
I'm doing great, Trey. I appreciate you having me on tonight.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you coming back on. First off, wanted to touch on the crazy, epic 8 overtime Georgia versus Georgia Tech last Friday on a chilly Friday night. Didn't think it would come to that. As Georgia fans, it was very stressful as it is usual. I was talking to my mom after the game. She said Larry Munson would have loved that game.
Boy, wouldn't
he? He would have. Rest in peace. 44-42. Haynes King played his butt off, 300 yards, over 100 yards rushing. Got to get it to the kid. Left it all out there, but didn't have enough to get the win. Also, Brent Key, hats off to him. That
yes.
He definitely wanted that game, but didn't have enough bullets left in the gun. But Georgia wins epic 44-42 win. Wanted to get your reaction on that.
Well, I'll tell you what, he might not have had bullets left in the gun, but he was taking the magazine out and throwing it at you and throwing the gun at you too. I was at the game, so I got to experience that. Yeah, I got to experience that. It was a very unique perspective. And honestly, since last year, watching Buster Faulkner run that offense with Haynes King really had me sort of on the edge of my seat because, first off, Buster knows Georgia's defense in and outs. He's been out there running against their scout teams. He's been using the scout team against the first team D, the second team D. He knows what exploits it. I'm sure he's heard Kirby Smart and the rest of the defensive staff cussing up storms because they're beating them on certain situations. And sometimes, a guy gets out-athleted, but a lot of times it can be scheme-related too. So you think about it. He's had that whole time. I've had an opportunity as a coach to take my style, knowing that I'm playing a team with a coach that I used to coach with, and I know his tendencies, that you have the ability to go out there and try to exploit those tendencies. Do they work all the time? No, but it definitely gives you an advantage. And I think that's the reason why we've seen Buster Faulkner and his offense run very well against our defense. He knows how to put us in what I call stress situations. It's not necessarily that we're out of place, but because he can motion somebody, and because you've got motion every play, you got to be accountable, almost like triple option or like the old school wing T team that was running the veer, where you have a guy in motion, so you've got to take care of the dive, you got to take care of the quarterback, you got to take care of the pitch back. And it's the same thing. Buster does a great job of utilizing his talent, and Haynes King by far impressed me last year. That's why I called him out this year to beat Florida State out of the gate. And if he'd have stayed healthy, I think they would have had better promise to even have a better record than what they actually did do. But I think Brent Key's got that team going in a great direction. I have a lot of respect for them, honestly. But from Georgia's perspective, believe it or not, as a coach, fans hate it. What happened? They want to see a game where we're just blow them out and finish up. But as a coach, I love it. It makes you battle tested when you got to go 4 quarters and then some, where you're basically at the bottom of the barrel trying to figure out what you want to call off your play sheet to finish a 2-point conversion to win a ball game. And they finally just won it with base inside zone. So honestly, to tell you the truth, as long as we stay healthy or stay as healthy as we've been, I think we're going to be in good shape, honestly, because it just puts us in perspective that we don't ever give up, we don't ever let up, and we realize we're a 4-quarter team. And you like to see battle-tested games because it lets you know where you're at, where your heart's at, where your team's at, where your leadership's at, all those things combined.
Yeah, definitely a resilient team. Maybe not the most – well, they are a talented team. Maybe not the most consistent team Kirby Smart's ever had, but – man, you gotta get a crowbar to knock these guys out. You gotta knock them out cold, stone cold. Another one this reminded me of was some of those Alabama games from the Tech side. Beat them all but 1 or 2 minutes, and they come back and they just get you in the end. And just great teams find a way to win. That's what that was. But resilience is the key word. What I was surprised was first off, had Rec Talk on last week. Great Georgia Tech content. He kept saying Haynes King couldn't throw past the line of scrimmage, those shoulder issues. You're going to see more Aaron Philo, which I was surprised. You didn't even see him a snap, and Haynes King, I guess, healed up over the last couple of weeks. But man, he came out and looked great. So I was surprised on that end. And then Carson Beck playing a clean game, third straight game with no turnovers. Ended up having 5 touchdowns. Georgia ran a little bit when they could. But another one I wanted to ask, and this will be leading into the Texas game too, Coach Hayes.
Yes.
What do you think the issues are where Georgia can't stop the run the last couple of weeks? And that's something we're going to worry about heading into Texas.
If you look at what they did, Haynes King predominantly was the carrier of the football. And if you think about that, go back to the Alabama game. Someone that actually had something similar to that style of offense was Jalen Milroe running the football. If you think about it, the same woes that we had trying to stop Jalen Milroe against Alabama was very similar to what we were struggling with Haynes King as well. Because like I said, you have the threat of being able to hand it off on the stretch. So you've got to take care of the perimeter with your outside guys and be good tacklers. But if you have one linebacker that gets removed because of motion, and then you've got one less guy in the box and they exploit that spot, which happened quite often, it becomes an issue. So what it's got to be, and, if I'm Texas, I take probably a couple of plays out of that playbook. Not necessarily because I don't think, Arch Manning is a good running quarterback, but to me, he's not a dual threat +1 quarterback. They're not looking to live their life off him being the primary ball carrier or the secondary ball carrier every time the ball is snapped, like they were doing with Haynes and obviously like Jalen Milroe with Alabama. But still, though, you've got to be accountable for that. And I wouldn't doubt it if they try to apply that to their offense, maybe throw in a wrinkle or two, because they see how they can get people out of space. And when you get people out of space and you're attacking with gap scheme and you keep the football with a quarterback that's accountable as a +1 guy in the box, it tends to create, like I called it a second ago, like it stresses, what I call our stressors, where it's not necessarily that you're not still sound to it. You've got the right people in the right places, hat for hat. But by moving people and having them have to maintain eye discipline all while playing fast, all while people are moving, that does tend to have an issue with still younger guys trying to apply themselves. Because to me, defensive linemen are defensive linemen. You got to take on a base block, a down block, a stretch block. You've got to be able to get off blocks and try to defeat your gap and get to the football. But at linebacker level and at safety level, the eye discipline is so much different because you're trying to watch people in jet motion. You've got your responsibility to your gap, and one step in the wrong place and you've got a guard or a tackle on you and you've got leverage and then you're beat. And I think that's what Georgia Tech exploited a little bit on that Friday night, and the reason why you saw the struggles the way they did, because a lot of times we had pretty decent fits, but it was just one of those things where you got one guy that needs to make the play, miss tackle or get sealed off on the block, and they have a hole to run through, and you get 5 to 6, 7 yards at a time. That's very frustrating because, like I said, it's not one of those things where you're playing behind the chains. Georgia Tech was continuously playing in front of the chains, and that's something that makes your defense very weary.
Yeah, I just think all in all, go back to what you said, is Buster Fulton to kind of know, and Kirby Smart backwards and forwards and kind of figured him out, and he just gave him all kind of problems. But Georgia gutted it out, resilient, got the win.
Yep. And
then before we move on to the big-time matchup, I want to give you a shout-out. A lot of Georgia fans might need this weekend. It's going to be VivaTequilaSeltzer.com, 0 carbs, 0 sugar. Great for the tailgate. Great for some of the holiday gifts coming up. Doghouse 20 for 20% off. Again, that's Doghouse 20 for 20% off. VivaTequilaSeltzer.com. Check them out on Instagram as well. My personal favorite is the watermelon huckleberry. It's also tasty as well. Check them out on their website. Big time matchup, rematch is going to be Georgia versus Texas, SEC championship game, Mercedes-Benz, 2.5 point spread, which is interesting. Do want to first off and ask the question that everybody's talking about. They're probably going to beat this to death. Do you believe in the theory it's hard to beat a team twice? What's your thoughts on that being come from?
Yeah, I have to say it's tough. I've had it happen a few times in high school back when I was actually in school playing, and also in the earlier times when the region would play out where you would end up playing a team in the regular season, and then you'd have the 1 through 4, and then 1 would play 4, 2 would play 3. It's really tough because it tends to make people kind of settle into this mindset that if we did it once, we're going to be able to do it again. You got to treat it like you've never played Texas this year, like this is the first time you've played it. That's the mindset you've got to have, because if you go in with a comfort level, that's, to me, that complacency you hear Coach Smart talk about. I feel like that's what you have when you go into a week of preparation where you beat this team already, where you showed, we showed out defensively. A lot of people don't realize, and I won't go too far into depth because I know you've got some different questions about it. But, the thing that I have to look at is I believe that to answer your question, that when you look at playing a team the second time in the same year, you have to just look at it as an isolated situation. We had an opportunity. We took advantage of it. We played well on defense, didn't play very good on offense, took advantage of a lot of short fields and capitalized on that and won in Austin. But this is a different beast. No matter if it's in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, if it was at Sanford Stadium, we've still got to approach this as if we haven't played them. And look at it from that mindset that keeps you hungry, that keeps you motivated to say, okay, these are the things we want to do to be, effective and moving forward. But to answer your question, definitely, I'm one of those that believes you don't, look at, that team the way you played them the first time and expect the same results just because you're playing them again.
Yeah, completely agree on that. And as we see, and also in other sports, NFL, it's hard to beat these divisional teams twice.
Right.
Falcons fans, hard to beat Panthers twice, even though they're down, or New Orleans or Tampa Bay. So it's hard to beat a team twice. They usually split. So completely agree with that.
I do think that I was going to say, though, I do think you're wired better against certain teams. I know that sounds weird, but I think the way you plug and play when you go in against a team is just a little bit unique in its design. And I think we are very fit to beat Texas again. There's no doubt about that, but it's because of how we line up against them and who our guys are versus who their guys are and what they like to do versus what we like to do. So that does help, in that long run of things, because I think certain teams match up very well against one another.
Yeah, I agree. It's all about matchups. Did want to mention maybe a little off the field. So Julian Humphrey earlier in the week announced transfer portal, which I thought was weird timing. Like, why would you do it right now? Maybe after one of the playoff games or whatever. But do you think this is a little bit of a distraction? Do you think he's even going to be a part of the team? I know looks like he hasn't played last couple of games. I think he started 10 out of 12 games. So do you think any distraction on this?
Without a doubt. When you have a kid that's acting that way, and honestly, he's probably been that way ever since his reps has gone down. You notice probably since realistically the middle of the year, you've seen every game where his reps continue to get worse and worse. And that comes from your attitude going out there every day. When you don't go out to try to earn things and you've got guys that are pushing you from behind and you realize that you're just one play away or two plays away of inconsistencies that you could be replaced. And then when you get replaced, it's hard for people in today's time. These kids nowadays just don't get it, that instead of saying what's best for the team, it's more about myself. And when you put yourself in front of the team, you can't have that. And I know Coach Smart's old school. He's like me in that mentality. I'm sure that he probably has Humphreys disconnected from the team. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see him at all since he's done this situation. And I think the players kind of in the same way feel this way. I think he's been kind of getting on some people's nerves. I'm not going to lie. I posted something on Twitter the other day where I wanted just my Dawg fans, because I was breaking film down and I had it on the sky cam with just the sound only. And I wanted everybody just to hear the roar of the stadium, when Frazier scored. And I didn't notice it till after, a few people had looked at it, that I was getting some replies saying, look at, Humphreys and Ellis Robinson walking off the field together while their team is celebrating in the middle of the field. And I didn't see it till after it was brought to my attention. And, the next day Humphreys, says he's going to be entering the transfer portal. I hope he's not in Ellis Robinson's ear. I don't think he is, but like I said, it was really kind of disheartening watching those two walk off the field when their team had just won that, gut-wrenching game, 44 to 42, and their team celebrating in the end zone, bands playing, everybody screaming, and they're walking to the locker room. So, but to answer your question, I think he's definitely, I would say 99.9% sure we're not going to see him at all.
Yeah. And then he flirted, he sounded like he flirted a little bit last year and put his toe in the water a little bit about. So, hey, you don't want to be a dog, kind of like what Kirby says. I don't want to waste energy on you. So I agree with that. So it looks like it's going to be, is it the Daniel Harris show then?
Yeah, and I like Daniel Harris as I've watched him. His sample size has grown from him playing. He's got great length, and he's definitely not afraid to tackle, which you definitely love to see as a DB coming up and making tackles. Very aggressive, has a good lean, and he's beginning his actual, to me, what he's got to grow in is that we do mismatch between man and zone, and he's probably got to learn how to strap down the zone a little bit better when he's in cover 3, cover 4 stuff, and he's got guys in his zone to be able to learn to close on receivers and to be able to dislodge footballs when they're thrown into his zone. But as far as his man technique's getting better and better every week, and I like his size. I like him, just seemingly growing up in front of us, and I think that's the reason why we've seen 7 on the field more than 12 in the last 6 weeks.
Yeah. And I know earlier in the year, I believe Humphrey got burned pretty good bit, so –
well, Daniel, Daniel did too, though. I mean, Daniel got beat in the Mississippi State game. I mean, I watched them both get beat, but you're right. Julian Humphreys was having a lot more inconsistencies because what I noticed with him is not just his pass coverage. He wasn't tackling either. He's not a very good tackler in open space either. So, it's just that consistency you've got to have. You got to put the best player you think out there that's going to contribute to help you win ball games.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting matchup to see for the Georgia-Texas game. Mm-hmm. Yeah, looking at the matchup again, I did want to ask, because everybody's asking, do you think you see some packages with Arch Manning since he is mobile over Ewers, and how much do you think he plays?
I wouldn't put it past Sark to do that. Just like I said earlier, I think that they have to see what Jalen did to us with Alabama, and then, of course, what Haynes King did with us from Georgia Tech. I think that Arch does a good job of those kinds of things. Unfortunately, they're not used to running +1 type stuff, though. So that's not just something you put in and just all of a sudden get good at, because you've got to learn the timing and the sequencing of running people in jet, timing it up to where you're catching that snap right before the jet back gets to you, being able to ride a jet back about 2 half steps, watching the defensive end to see whether you got to give or pull. So, I say that they might put some similarities in. I just don't know what the extensiveness of it is, especially when you're going into the SEC championship. It's not really a situation where you want to start dawdling in something else just because you're trying to exploit Georgia for 1 or 2 plays. Do what's best. Look at what was productive against them when you played them in Austin, even though you realize you're going to have to obviously pass block a little bit better, maybe throw some quick screen game, get the ball out quicker, sort of similar to what Ole Miss did against us. Ole Miss didn't give us time to get to the quarterback, where Quinn was sitting back there for that 4-second window, and he just wasn't having time to throw because we were getting to him so quick. So I do think they'll probably have a couple of things for us, especially if Quinn is struggling again like he did last time. But, we've got to go out there and be able to be ready, because I'm sure Coach Smart is preparing them this week for both of them.
Yeah, also, I believe they're down potentially one of their starting linemen, which might be a blow. Yeah, and then it looks like they've been rolling with the Wisner kid. I know we shut him down in our game. I think it was Georgia or Texas only rushed for 29 yards. Mm-hmm. Do you see any change from the last couple of weeks, or it's just a lesser opponent? I think he had 133 yards against Texas A&M.
Well, he ran well against Texas A&M, and that's a big-time deal. I mean, they go in there and they play those guys for the first time in a long time, and for Wisner to show up and be able to do what he did against them, I was pretty impressed with that, because watching on film, I figured Jaden Blue would be the guy that we would see in the backfield against us when we played him in Austin, but you can tell, just like with anything else, as the time has gone on, Wisner has he's shown a little bit more the ability to be resilient, catching the ball out of the backfield, obviously being able to run and make people miss, and just showing more productivity. But Jaden Blue's going to run the ball too, I would assume. They even put them in 2-back packages I saw against Texas A&M, where you didn't realize who was going to get it in that situation. But, it's a matter of us just doing the fundamental things, man. We got to tackle. We got to be able to, once we execute and get to the football, we got to make tackles. I call it getting home. When you get home, man, you got to put your foot up and you put your feet up and, take care of business. And it's the basic situation that you look at. We get home, we got to make tackles, we got to secure and, make sure we don't let him get loose.
Yeah, let's hope we get a repeat performance from Jalen Walker and Mikal Williams. Hopefully they can get some more sacks. I don't know if they'll get 7, but hey, if we get 3-4 or cause some turnovers, that'll be good.
Well, I do know this. The offensive line is probably going to watch film against them, because I know I would, and be able to say, okay, what did they do to get us right here? What did they do to get us right here? How do we need to make a check to this now when we see this type of setup pre-snap? We don't need to jump when they stem, obviously, and they didn't. A lot of people now are not doing that anymore when we pre-stem. But I think there's going to be some tricks up their sleeve, because if they really want to see success and not see a 7-sack game again, they're going to have to get the ball out quick, and that's going to be basically then putting it up to our DBs and our safeties playing good man-to-man coverage and playing good zone coverage and not letting them complete passes.
All right, Coach Hayes, how about give us a score prediction for the game? Georgia underdog, one of the rare times, 2.5 points against Texas.
It's one of those where, again, being in Mercedes-Benz Stadium, it's like a second home to us. We tend to play well there. Texas coming in for the first time is going to be caught up in a little bit of the, I see it in their fan base, and I know the Texas players probably don't feel the same way, but it being their first year in, they're getting all this glitz and glamour about being in the SEC and the first year making it to the SEC championship. But heck, I think about 75% of them could have gotten to the SEC championship with their schedule. Honestly, to tell you the truth, I see us doing very well against them, and it all comes down to the fact of how we offensively produce. If we don't offensively produce like we did last time, we could be in for a bar fight, because we had a lot of short fields from turnovers, and that's what helped us execute to score some points. But I see it being a back and forth game similar to what we did last year against Alabama, but I want to say us being on the 3-point side plus there. So I'm going to call it 27-24 Georgia over Texas in the SEC championship on Saturday.
All right, I like it. Got Dogs 27-24. Yeah, I think I'm going to go with that too. Is Texas hasn't been here before, even though Sark has coached when he did coach for the Falcons back in there, Mercedes-Benz.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be an adjustment. Also, the travel. I did think Georgia might be a little fatigued, but getting that extra day, maybe they'll get an extra some time to heal a little bit. Carson Beck, I don't think he's going to throw 3 picks again. He's going to have a clean game. If he plays clean, we can get any kind of.
Trey, I don't think that's being talked about enough, what he's done in the last 3 games. I mean, if you look at what he's done in the last 3 games, I mean, it's unprecedented. He has been like night and day different. He
was throwing, I would rewatch the highlights, he was throwing some lasers, NFL throws in that Tech game, like that one with Jesse Palmer goes 1, 2, 3, 4 guys, and he threw it, dropped it right in there.
He layered it in cover 4 coverage, threw it to Dominic over the whole defender. It was unreal for him. It's very similar to the same throw he made to Oscar Delp in the Tennessee game, where that whole defender didn't anticipate, man, he's going to throw that football right as he passes, man. You're talking about a layered throw. You're right. He's finally beginning to show that NFL potential that we thought he would show from day one, and it's almost like it's taken him 2 quarters of the year or 3 quarters of the year to finally get cemented into that play style. So, that's really nice to know, seeing our quarterback getting hot at the right time.
That's right. And if we can get maybe instead of 6 drops, 2 to 3 drops, because I think the wide receivers are who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Get Frazier going. You might even get a little bit of Roderick Robinson going. And I like Kirby Smart out coaching Sark by a little bit, and they're getting up for this game. They know what's on the line, but I'm gonna go 31-27, cover that 2.5 point spread. It's gonna be a 4-quarter game.
Yes.
It's a hand wringing stress. Larry Munsonism's going, but it's gonna be another one. Oh wait, always I'm gonna get 31-27.
I tell you what they need to do is let's don't throw it to Arian Smith first. If you want to go for a big play, I don't think people realize, and this is something I was actually looking at tonight when I was breaking some more film down that I'm probably not going to put out, but I'm just watching it. I love watching game tape. But we ran basically 6-man protection, ran a 3 progression route, but we threw the vertical to London Humphreys, and Cass Jones wide open on the check down. It's like the second play from scrimmage in the game, and we threw it to London on the post route and just barely overthrew him. I mean, it was like one step, it's a catch for a touchdown. DB kind of held him up on his stem as he stemmed on the post, and that one little hold held him up. It like slowed his momentum down to where the DB could get into his hip. And that one step cost him the TD on the second play from scrimmage. I don't mind it. I would like to see us vertically try to stretch Texas if we have time. And that's a very productive play call where you got 6-7 man protection throwing on a 3 receiver route progression and throwing it to a guy that's not Arian Smith. We've got to do something with Arian to get his mojo going in the right direction instead of starting off, like we have in the last few games where when he doesn't make that first catch, man, it's like he's just in a funk. And,
right.
He's one of our most productive pass catchers, and he's the fastest guy on the team. We've got to figure out a way to utilize him and create consistency so that he produces.
Maybe see Nitro tuggle a little more if he's ready.
I think he's somebody that we're trying to work in a little bit at a time, just kind of in bits and pieces. Sokovi's the same way. But, it's also, too, it's tough when you get put into the limelight, especially in an SEC championship game. And, Coach Bobo and staff are trying to isolate plays just so that they can throw it to Sokovi and Nitro. I wouldn't mind seeing Sokovi and Nitro take a quick jailbreak screen, let them move in space. They're little jitterbugs, man. They can get around, they can move. I like to see them trying to get in space. That's a very productive play. It's just an extension of the run game. That'll be great ways to get those guys involved too.
Maybe get Arian Smith on some jet sweeps and those reverses, man. Get him out of space.
Exactly. And I wouldn't doubt it since we've run it so much that Coach Bobo finally, I hope he does, has some kind of boot action off the reverse where it looks like we're running the reverse. Carson keeps it on the pitch, or either the tailback keeps it on the pitch, and we have something that comes back the other way. It would have to be with the quarterback if we're going to boot out of it. But I think because we've run it so much, I think Texas is going to definitely prepare for it. I used to call those barnyard periods when I was coaching defense, and we'd have a 5-minute period of barnyard plays, especially if you played a team by week 8 or 9 and they had run, 10 different trick plays. You always had to keep that in your arsenal because you never know when it was going to come out and be ran. So I'm sure Texas is preparing for it, but hopefully we're ready to counter it too and call their bluff.
Yeah, should be a great game, and hopefully Georgia can win, get that bye week, heal up, hopefully get that number 2 seed. Worst case, from what I've been reading, there's no telling this committee. Hopefully still get a home football game, maybe against like Indiana. That would be a good matchup, worst case, but can't trust these guys at all.
Well, it scared me when we went to 12. When it dropped us after the Ole Miss game, I thought there was no hope for this committee. And even what they did with the Ohio State, that's ridiculous what they did with them after the loss to Michigan. I could sit there and talk about their stupidity on that for hours, but I digress with that. But it does seem to think that my thought process was, because it seemed so weak in their analysis of what they were truly looking at, was that if we did lose in the SEC championship game, we were going to get penalized again this year, even in a 12-team playoff. But it seems to me as time has gone on and what they announced last night, with no team that's playing this week, will they move in their rankings, that the worst that we can move to is, it looks like if we do lose, we're going to be hosting Indiana in Sanford Stadium, which would be awesome. And then on top of that, if we win, it's wonderful. We're the SEC champs. And it's funny, as frustrated as we've been this year with this football team, Kirby Smart has somehow navigated us through a 10-2 record with the strongest strength of schedule ever, and probably it feels like 3-4 decades, probably ever, that Georgia has ever seen. And we're sitting here talking about the fact of how frustrated we are with this, that, and the other, but yet Kirby's moved us through a 10-2 record. We're playing for the SEC championship, and with that, we win. We have a bye in the first round. So how special is that as Georgia fans? Looking at where we're at and where we're going. I mean, it's still been a great year. Has it been a time of pulling our hair out at times? Sure. Frustration at times? Sure. But that's the beauty of football. And that's also the beauty of coaching. That's why I love the game so much, because, it's hard to be impartial. I'm a fan at times, but, I also have to look at it realistically too, because just like with the Georgia Tech game, I feel like there was growth in that. There was something that comes from that, from when you do something like that and go through a type of anomaly like they had to deal with in an 8 overtime win. So it's exciting to see the future of where our program's going.
I think this could be some of his best coaching this year, just with a little bit of the less team. Maybe the defense isn't as good as it used to be. So, yeah.
I agree. And, it's kind of tough because you think experience is what pays off, especially in a Kirby Smart defense and even with the offense. Even our offense has really struggled. But I think adding, I hate to say it, but with an injury to Ernest Green and him not being 100%, I think that's been a blessing in disguise because it's allowed Monroe Freeling to get all the snaps. And I think we have finally solidified a 5-man rotation up front. I think Dylan Fairchild was a little under the weather. That's why we saw a little bit of Micah Morris at guard. But, watching him on film, I've always been a fan of Micah. He hasn't played it up to his potential this year, but he did a very good job Friday against Tech.
Yeah, it's always good to have a good standard 5 because they've been bouncing around musical chairs, so that's always good.
Exactly. Consistency is definitely key. It definitely gives Beck more, I think, a little trust and the courage to stay in the pocket a little bit longer and deliver those balls that we want to see him throw.
Oh, yeah. And then Coach Hayes wanted to briefly touch on it just because it is National Signing Day, the early National Signing Day, so a little different than the last couple of years. But Georgia's sitting at number 3, but still potentially, if they can get Justice Terry on Friday at 12 p.m., could jump up and be the number 1 overall team on recruiting-wise. So I want to get your thoughts on and maybe some highlights. I've tried to catch up with a little bit. I know you know more than me, but maybe who stands out and then maybe like a dark horse or who could play right away that maybe Georgia fans don't know about.
I know Uzumani Chroma today, decommitting and going to Florida State. A lot of people are upset about that. But honestly, to tell you the truth, I think we're in good shape in the running back room. And I still think we're going to be probably looking at the portal for that if that doesn't happen. And then the defensive line position, I think if we get Justice Terry on Friday, which I'm about 99% sure we're going to get, we were 99.9% that Caleb Downs was coming to us from the transfer portal from Alabama, and you saw where that went. So, I mean, with all the talking heads and the crystal balls that we have showing that Justice Terry's coming to the University of Georgia, I think it's true. I think it's going to happen. And we are going to – I want to say this. It's not the most – believe it or not, the most talented class that Coach Smart has had. In 2018, I believe he signed 7 5-stars. That's unprecedented. That was back, and I think the only one that did not, and he would have been in the NFL too, I think it's the kid from Rome High School, Adam Anderson. Was the only one. What obviously happened with him, and I think he would have been a first-round draft pick himself. Every other one that was picked in that group, the other 6 are in the NFL now. But this talent that he has is deep, and especially where I like it at because of last year's offensive line haul and then this year's offensive line haul. He's got 12 guys under now Stacy Searles' recruitment cycle that we're going to get to see Stacy Searles actually coach the guys that he recruited instead of still coaching the kid that went to Coach Luke that went to Clemson. Yeah, Matt Luke. And I think that's going to be an opportunity because I think a lot of people are down on Coach Searles. I think now hopefully he gets the opportunity to coach those kids that he's recruited. But, to me, even with Wynn and McLeod and those guys not signing today because we thought we might steal one of those guys, I think if Justice Terry signs on Friday, we will have the deepest group that we have signed in a long time, if not the best, as far as coming down to the deepest group versus, most talented group. But, I mean, we recruited in the state of Georgia so well. I mean, you're looking at just all the different positions from end to tackle to linebacker and really in good shape. So, I'm looking at my board here and just, I don't know. I think, honestly, the one that I'm most excited, we called C.J. Wiley. I told you he was coming. You remember we talked about that? Yeah. I am excited about Talon Taylor. I had the opportunity to talk with his mama just real quickly via just trying to speak with her on Twitter because I wanted to do a little promo on his abilities because I wanted to compare his junior film to his senior film, and I was just doing a little 6-7 show segment on him, and I wanted to know how to pronounce his names. That's a big deal to me as a teacher and as a coach. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing the kid's name right. Because a lot of people call it Taylor. And I said, how do you spell it? And she was like, it's just like a bird's beak. She said, it's Talon. And I said, okay. So I was making sure because I wanted to reference him the right way. But I'm telling you, watching him on film, He is, I'm not going to compare him to George Pickens, but he is one of the most highly touted wide receiver recruits that we've had since George Pickens. And that's exciting for Georgia football because we need that. We understand that. We've seen that through the year this year. So he's my exciting player that we have that signed his NLI today. But I'm looking at my board here, just trying to find a dark horse that really fits.
How about Elias Williams? I've been hearing good things about him. He's tall. I think he'll be a problem.
Yes. I didn't want to say him because honestly, Elias and Ethan Barber both. We got Barber, who's also from Milton High School, along with CJ Wiley. Can you believe those two were on the same team, on the same high school team, Barber and Wiley? They're man-childs. Elias Williams, to me, fit. He has that look of the Washington kid that went to Pittsburgh, but he's a little bit quicker, a little more quick twitch. That's how scary this kid is. He is a mismatch in space at, roughly 6'7". He's a little bit smaller than Washington kid, but the way he lumbers when he's running routes, he reminds me of him when he's running routes. But I just see a little bit more of a quick twitch. In Camden County, where he's at, they ran him a lot more outside in one-on-ones, man, and he is a mismatch. And I think he's going to do the same thing when he comes to Georgia. He's going to give us the opportunity with the guys that we have there right now, along with the two that are coming in. I think Barber and Williams both are hybrids. I think they really do fit where they can line down and put their hand in the dirt and block you, but they can also line up behind the tight end like we do in a lot of dual 12 personnel and be able to run routes on safeties and be able to be a mismatch for them.
Yeah, definitely excited about him. How about maybe like a Landon Roldan? Maybe like another, hate to call him a lad because he doesn't grow on trees, but similar to that.
Yeah, Landon, I talked to you about him, I believe, back when we talked. Golly bum, it feels like forever since we've been together. I think it was August when you and I. It was August. Landon is one of those. He reminds me of a kid that we had back during the Aaron Murray years. Michael Bennett is who he reminds me of. Wow. He's a very good spatial awareness kid. I think he's a little bit quicker than Michael. As far as in space, a little bit more quick twitch, but he runs very similar to him. He's very good at his route tree, very polished route tree. And his senior year tape from his junior year tape, that's the beauty of watching tape. When you watch junior huddle versus his senior huddle, it just blows me away watching his progression and him getting better. You don't just see this static line going across. You see every game, just like with Talon. Talon's senior tape blew up. I mean, I think if I'm not mistaken, he got nominated, I saw today on Twitter, as the offensive player of the year for his region. Maybe even, I can't even remember, it might be even for the whole state. But that was just what I'm saying, his increase in what he does. But Landon's one of those two. He reminds me of, just like I said, a possession receiver that's going to get open, can separate himself in space. He's probably going to be at the Z or the X position. I don't know if they'll really look at him at the slot. To me, a guy that lines up in the slot has to be quick twitch. He has to be somebody that can move the hips and really, change direction very quickly. So I see him probably being outside versus inside. But, when you're a receiver, you've got to be able to be, ready to go at any three spots, whether you're at the H, the Z, or the X. So that's what I'm saying. Our wide receiver core, I mean, when you look at Tyler Williams, you got CJ Wiley, you got Talon, Taylor, Landon Roldan, and then the Blackshear kid also. Blackshear that's who I was going to give to you as my sort of, right now, kind of the underdog, if you want to say. Not many people's been talking about him. But I think he's someone that's going to be able to contribute to that receiver core as well. I'm really interested to see what they're going to do with Todd Robinson from Valdosta. Mm-hmm. Todd Robinson is a quarterback for their high school team, and he is fast, unbelievably fast. And I know we're recruiting him as a DB safety, probably. I don't know if we don't look at him, it may be looking at him a little bit of receiver possibly too. He is an athlete to me that can make people miss. And honestly, he's not just that straight speed like Arian Smith. He's that kind of kid that can move in space and really make, if you watch his film, and you see him, he's a man among boys when he runs away. Even in the playoffs, he is running away from kids. So really interested to see what they do with him. I'm excited about him. I think he's going to be that kid we're talking about down the road that not really a lot of people are talking about right now.
Maybe it's not a good comparison. Maybe like a McCall Hardman, right? He was shifty. He could just leave you, something like that.
Yes.
Get the ball.
That's a very good comparison. I got to see McCole Hardeman, my son. Let's see. My son's freshman year, we played Elbert County third round of the playoffs, and McCole was all they had. He was their, go-to guy, and he was unbelievable watching him in real time. So, yes, I definitely could see Todd Robinson being similar to that style and speed. And it's the same way we recruited McCole, I think, on the defensive side and eventually, shifted him over to offense. I think that could be a mirror image of what we do with Todd Robinson, because like I said, there's nothing on film that shows him playing defense. I'm sure he can play it, but, it's one of those things where if you're not trying to put the ball in that kid's hands and letting him run with it, something's wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm excited to hear more about him. That's real good.
Yeah.
And then my personal favorite real quick was just because he was on the podcast, Mason Short, 4-star, big lineman out of Evans. So I always kind of liked him.
Yeah, you like a blue-collar kid who's just ready to come to work. I see him being a lot like Tate. I think he's going to be just that kid that shows up every day and just loves to, like Hulk, Hulk smash, right? He just wants to go out there and maul people. Very humble kid, very strong kid. I think being in the weight room, he's going to be one of those kids that he's going to have to improve his technique, and that comes with going from the high school level and being a man among boys to all of a sudden now you've got everybody in front of you the same size as you, and you've got to learn to have better technique versus trying to maul people. But I think he's one of those that will improve week in and week out, and I do see Mason Short as being someone that we could utilize as time goes on. He's definitely going to be somebody that can help contribute to that offensive line room.
Yeah, he seemed like he's all dog too and committed.
I think if I'm not mistaken, I was watching Twitter this morning. He was one of the first ones I saw that had his NLIN.
There you go. It's always good to see. Well, how do we follow your content on social media?
Brother, I'm out there right now trying my best to, just talk shop and continue to connect the fans to the fundamentals of football. On Twitter, you can find me at Coach Hayes Huddle. I'm on all social media accounts, but I primarily work through Twitter. I like to do my short stuff through there. And then, of course, I apply my other stuff through YouTube, and that's where you can find all of my breakdowns that I do. I do offensive and defensive breakdowns. I do recruiting profiles. I also do player profiles as well. On my link tree, you can find all the different places you can go. And in fact, you find out that I have a Call of Duty fix down there at the bottom. I enjoy playing. I enjoy playing COD, but I'm on all social media outlets. I love just expressing my opinions about football and enjoy the game. Being a coach for 20 plus years and having the experience to be able to, like I said, connect the fan and help them understand a little bit more about the X's and O's is what I love about my deal. So it's been a journey. I started in January, and here we are in December, and I'm just about to eclipse the 2,000. The 2,000 subscriptions, and it's just been really good. The fans have been great. The people that have supported me through this process has been awesome, and you're one of them, Trey. I appreciate you taking the time to want me to come on the show with you and be able to talk a little shop.
Oh, it'd been great. You actually had one of my when we had it back in August, one of my most views and most subscribers all in one. So yeah,
wow,
yeah.
That's
also
great.
Yeah, check out Coach Hayes. Get him on the road. Hey, subscribe to him. Get him on the road to 2,000, and then follow him also on Twitter, and he'll talk some ball. He's a great breakdown. You remind me of a lot of Brooks.
Mm-hmm. Brooks Austin. Brooks Austin. Believe it or not, Brooks is the one who turned me on to doing. Pause. He turned me to doing this because as a football coach, when you're sitting at home now, not having to go out to practice every day, not having to break film down, I was sitting here twiddling my thumbs, Trey. Right. And my wife was like, "You got to find something to do." So, of course, being a Georgia fan, I would watch stuff and I catch podcasts and things like that. And I just happened to see there's Brooks. This was back when he had first started. He's sitting in front of that Sports Illustrated logo, and I was watching him take film over, and he was drawing the X's and O's, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's something that I could do, something I would really enjoy doing." So once I figured out the software of the computer and how to be able to draw on it and that kind of stuff, it was all she wrote. I remember when I did my first edit, it took me like 3 hours to do a 5-minute video. And now I can knock out a 5-minute video in 5 minutes. So, it comes with learning the process and being able to be patient with it. But when you're passionate about something, it's not work. And that's the reason why I enjoy doing what I do.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, check Coach Hayes out. He's a pleasure to watch. And if everybody's still around, make sure to like, subscribe, share. Doghouse Podcast, and let's hope Georgia can go get a W and move on to the playoffs.
Yes, go Dogs.
Go Dogs. See.